I've done this long enough, I know enough ways to get attention from people. Thank you all very much. I'm not going to hold this fork all evening up here. Thank you very much for being here. I'm Jim Colby. I'm the Vice Chairman of the International Republican Institute. And on behalf of IRI, the board, the staff, and of all the people around the world that have been served by IRI over the years, and where we have made democracy a little bit stronger, a little bit better. I want to thank you all very much for being here this evening and supporting what I think is a very important and wonderful evening. My purpose is only to welcome you and to get you started with your salad, and we'll be back to you with the program when the main course is served. So again, on behalf of the board and of all the people of the IRI family, we thank you very much for being here this evening. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening. I'm Mark Green, and I have the honor of serving as president of the International Republican Institute. Now, over the years, first as a congressman and then as ambassador, I admired IRI from afar, how it's entirely mission-driven, how it advances freedom and democracy in places like Bangladesh and Bhutan, Colombia and Kenya, Mali and Moldova, Tunisia, and Timor-Leste. Well, this past January, I was lucky enough to join IRI. What I learned very quickly is it's even better up close. We have a great team of democracy activists and experts. We have a board of directors that is the envy of any organization in town. Our chairman is America's democracy warrior, Senator McCain. We have generous partners like USAID, the State Department, the Canadian government, and of course the National Endowment for Democracy. We have innovative program partners like NDI and IFAS, SIPE and Solidarity, Freedom House, and the Bush Institute. But most importantly, we have all of you, fellow believers in the essential importance of freedom and democracy and human dignity. And we are grateful. Now, to get this evening underway, let me say that I'm also grateful to have my friend here tonight, Steve Hayes, as our Master of Ceremonies. Now, most people know Steve for his thoughtful insights as senior writer for the Weekly Standard and contributor for Fox News Special Report. Political junkies will remember his work as senior writer for the National Journal's Hotline, as well as director of Georgetown University's Institute of Political Journalism. He's written 2 New York Times bestsellers, and his work has appeared in publications ranging from the New York Post and National Review to Salon.com. He's been a commentator with CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, CNBC, the McLaughlin Group, and other than the Oprah Winfrey Network, I'm not sure what's left. But as we all know, he's been a consistent voice for American leadership and human liberty. In other words, he should feel right at home here tonight. So ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming to the stage our Master of Ceremonies, Steve Hayes.
Thank you very much, Mark. It is terrific to be here with you tonight, with everybody here tonight, and it's really nice to be taking a break from the panel on Fox News tonight, I have to say. We've spent so much time talking about what's wrong with the world in the past several months that it's nice to take a break and recognize what's right with the world. And that's part of the reason that I'm here tonight with you all in IRI. You know, we always get questions, I always get questions about what the panel's like, what Charles Krauthammer's like, and I got a handful of them during the reception tonight. So let me just anticipate and answer a few of the questions that I get about the panel before I actually start. So the first answer I'll give you, yes, Charles Krauthammer is in fact that brilliant. He's smart on a level that you all can understand when you see him or when you read his insights in the Washington Post. But the thing that stands out to me about Charles Krauthammer is that he's actually incredibly down to earth. He's just a normal guy. You can have a normal conversation with him. And I guarantee you, if I were that smart, I would be a pain in the you-know-what to deal with on a daily basis. The second answer is, yes, the arguments do, in fact, continue through the commercial break. We finish the panel and we keep arguing, and often we'll argue to the makeup room, or we'll argue downstairs, or I'll call Kirsten Powers on the drive home. How can you think that? And the third answer to the question I'm anticipating is no, I've never actually punched Juan Williams. We've come close a few times. But Juan is a good friend, and we disagree on virtually everything, but we have cordial disagreements both on air when we talk about this on Fox News, and then when we get a beer after the show and grab a burger. So it's a good group to be a part of. I'm very happy to be a part of this group here tonight, and particularly happy to be here with Mark Green. And I thank you very much for that kind introduction. And I hope you'll all permit me for just a second to sort of deviate from the script tonight for a few words about Mark. I'm from Wisconsin. I'm from Wauwatosa, Wisconsin. So when I was here in Washington, D.C., I followed Mark's election from afar. I was more interested in that congressional election than I was in many others. And when he won, I knew that he would be a good congressman. But what I didn't necessarily anticipate was that when he arrived in D.C., within several weeks, I would begin hearing from his colleagues just what a good congressman he was likely to be. And they praised him in particular for his intellectual curiosity, for his seriousness of purpose, and perhaps most important, or at least most important to me, for not being so full of it as many of his colleagues on Capitol Hill. Which I admired in particular. Over the years in Congress, in Africa, and in the private sector, Mark developed a strong reputation not just as a keen thinker on global affairs, but as a thought leader on U.S. foreign policy more broadly and America's role in the world. So it's an honor to be here with you. Mark, I appreciate you asking me to do this. I'm going to do everything I can not to screw it up. The IRI staff has done a great job. Let me start by recognizing members of Congress who are here with us tonight who are also not in that category of people who are full of themselves. First, and especially Senator John McCain, who has served as the chairman of IRI since 1993. Senator McCain. Senator Mark Kirk, who is on the IRI board. Senator Kirk here this evening? There he is, Senator. Senator Kelly Ayotte, who is on the founding council members of IRI's International Advisory Council. Senator. Representative Kay Granger, who is on the IRI board. There you are. There. Representative Ileana Ross-Lehtinen, who was with us earlier this evening and has had to depart, I'm told. Representative Doug Lamborn also was with us earlier this evening and has also had to leave. But Representative Sean Duffy, also from Wisconsin, remains with us tonight. Also joining us this evening are members of the Diplomatic Corps. And if I could ask that you please rise and be recognized as we display all of the countries that are represented here tonight. Please rise and be recognized. And most especially, a special thanks to all of you for supporting tonight's dinner. Your contributions help the Institute carry out its mission to help people build democratic societies that are open, transparent, and accountable to its citizens. So thank you all for your support. Now, I don't have to spend a lot of time going over, for those of you in this crowd, all of the important work that IRI does, but I just want to spend a moment recognizing some of it. You know, if you're here tonight, that IRI carries out important work all over the world, programs where they help political parties become more issue-based and responsive, where they assist citizens to participate in government planning, and where they increase the role of marginalized groups in the political process, including and especially women and youth. Simply put, IRI encourages democracies in places where it's absent, helps democracy be more effective where it is in danger, and shares best practices where democracy is flourishing. That is a mission that one might argue is more important now than ever before, and it certainly deserves a round of applause. So thank you to the IRI team and for all that you do. We begin this evening remembering Rich Williamson. Rich served on IRI's board of directors from 1990 until 2001, when he answered President George W. Bush's call to return to public service. He rejoined the board in 2004 and was named vice chairman in 2011, serving until his death last December. After his passing, many of us here remember reading tributes to Rich in newspapers and magazines across the country. And in a line from one of those remembrances that I took note of at the time and remembered as we were preparing for tonight, it came from Paul Wolfowitz's remembrance in Politico magazine, where he quoted Rich saying the following: "You have to be a realist to take steps day to day, but you have to be an idealist to know where you're going." Well, that sort of perfectly encapsulates the direction of American foreign policy, and a direction that we could all heed today. He meant a lot to IRI and to many of us in this room, most especially his family, who are with us here tonight. And although they couldn't join us, two of Rich's friends asked to be able to say a few words about what Rich meant to them.
I am pleased to join Senator John McCain in honoring a great American, Rich Williamson. Rich and I became friends as we were asked to co-chair a delegation to China in which we were talking about politics and democracy and the importance of elections. We then proceeded to work together on a task force that dealt with the responsibility to protect of what the international community's responsibilities are towards those that are being genocidally killed or through mass atrocities. And I have to say that Rich was one of these incredible people that had diplomatic skills, very determined in everything that he did, and had his feet on the ground. He was firmly rooted, and he was somebody that was dedicated to the work that he had done for the people of Sudan, and with his diplomacy generally. I have to say that it isn't easy to make new friends at a certain age. When Rich and I met, it's even harder to lose them. And so I miss Rich an awful lot. We did many, many things together. He was a great friend, and he very much deserves to be honored in every conceivable way for a man who was smart, determined, and not full of himself. And so, Rich, we all miss you very, very much.
It's fitting for Rich to be honored at an event sponsored by the International Republican Institute. He was such a strong advocate for democracy and human rights around the world, and I know these tributes would mean the world to him. With Rich's death last December, the nation lost a noble patriot, and I lost a good friend. Rich epitomized what it means to enter public service. Time and again, he put aside the fruits of lucrative private practice to answer the call to serve our country. His was a consistent call to strengthen our alliances, to face down tyranny, and to share the promise of freedom with people around the world. His courage and conviction also encompassed the political sphere. He spoke out time and again in support of candidates committed to American leadership in the world. And he was instrumental in helping shape my foreign policy priorities during my presidential campaign, as he was for other candidates. A man of conviction, courage, and constancy. I'll miss him, and the nation will miss his dedicated service.
Those are fitting tributes to a man who meant so much to so many people, including so many people here with us this evening. I would now like to invite IRI Chairman Senator John McCain to the stage to say a few words about Rich. Senator McCain.
Thank you, Steve. Those are fine tributes to a good man whose terribly untimely loss we still mourn, but who remains close to us in our affections and respect for him. I want to recognize Rich's family, his beloved wife Jane and their children Lisa and her husband Ryan, Ricky and his wife Sarah, and Craig. They join us tonight knowing how much IRI meant to Rich and how much Rich meant to IRI. Thank you. Thank you for sharing Rich with us, with his many friends, with IRI, an institution he inspired and improved, and with our country which he served proudly and generously. We share his loss with you and with so many people whose lives Rich touched and tried to make better, even if they had never heard his name mentioned. Rich was a good friend to many people in this room. He was also a good friend to many thousands of people who had no kinship with him other than their aspiration to live in freedom, dignity, and security. Those were the values that informed Rich's patriotism and that he served so faithfully in the world, whether they were Ethiopian refugees or abuse victims in Sierra Leone or the suffering multitudes in Darfur. Rich was their champion, whether they knew him or not. Rich believed in the universality of America's founding ideals. He believed all human lives had value and were endowed by their Creator with inalienable rights. He didn't just pledge allegiance to his ideals. He did more than give lip service to them when he saw them threatened and thwarted, where he saw people suffering. He committed himself fully, his time and energy and ability to help others, strangers to him in most instances, secure those ideals for themselves. He was not passive in the face of evil. He was a righteous man. And nowhere was that more evident than his dedicated service to the human rights of people in Africa. That's why I think Rich would be pleased with the program IRI has established in his name. Through the Rich Williamson Women of Peace Initiative in South Sudan and Sudan, IRI will support the efforts of women's organizations to promote peace and reconciliation in both countries using money donated to the Institute in Rich's honor. We are all concerned about recent developments in both countries, but more promising is the recognition that in South Sudan, women have often been agents who cross tribal, ethnic, and religious lines and effectively promote peace and inclusion. This initiative will help them do that, and it will help IRI sustain the legacy Rich left for us. I worked closely with Rich for decades. For many of those years on IRI's board of directors, we shared a belief in the importance of American leadership in the world and that our nation's security is inextricably linked to the global advance of our values. He was an invaluable colleague, a trusted counselor, an inspiring humanitarian, a dear and irreplaceable friend. His friendship honored me. I miss him a lot and always will. but we can keep his memory close by making ourselves useful to others and to the cause that Rich championed with all his heart, the rights and dignity of all God's children. Could I ask Rich's family to stand so we can recognize him tonight? Thank you. Last winter, the world watched as Ukrainians turned to the heart of Ukraine, the Maidan, to demand a better future, a future graced by the hope for peace and prosperity that only democracy can bring. What started as peaceful protests against President Viktor Yanukovych's broken promises of reform was soon met with deadly violence from the regime. But Ukrainians did not back down. Instead, the protests grew. When I visited the protesters in December, I was struck by their commitment to their just cause. At night, the Maidan and the surrounding streets sparkled with the lights of cell phones. During the day, as many as 1 million people from all walks of life gathered in the Maidan, and as Senator Murphy and I spoke, thousands and thousands interrupted us with cheers of "Thank you, USA." It was one of the most moving experiences I've ever had. Ultimately, in the face of the Ukrainian people's determination and dedication, Yanukovych fled. And thanks to the sacrifice of these Ukrainian patriots, the country now has the opportunity for a better future. Under the leadership of President Petro Poroshenko, the new government has already made significant progress in that direction, but its efforts are being undermined by President Vladimir Putin's imperial ambitions and his invasion of Ukraine. In the face of such aggression, we must be honest and clear. Indeed, if we cannot say clearly that what Putin is doing to Ukraine constitutes an invasion, then we're living in Putin's world. We should be equally clear that Putin intends to destabilize the country at all costs and will continue to take more and more of Ukraine until he faces a consequence that he is unwilling to incur. Sadly, we have not reached that point, and it is urgent that we do so. Many Americans may ask, why should we care what happens to a country like Ukraine? Here's why. What is happening in Ukraine is about far more than Ukraine. It is about the principles of international order that have brought peace and hope to Europe and much of the world beyond Europe since 1945. And whether a world based on these principles will endure or not. For the entirety of the last century, the United States and our friends and allies pursued the vision of a Europe whole, free, and at peace. We sacrificed our resources and shed our blood for it time and time again. And we did so not simply because this vision is just and right, but also because it's the only path to lasting stability and prosperity in Europe, which benefits us. These fundamental principles of the European and global order are what is at stake today in Ukraine. The principle that sovereign states have the right to make their own free decisions, that wars of aggression should be confined to our bloody past, and that power alone should not be licensed to oppress and subjugate. If Putin can invade a sovereign country for no reason other than greed, belligerence, and imperial ambition, what is to stop others from doing so? Putin's desire to restore a kind of imperial dominance over Russia's so-called near abroad poses a geopolitical challenge not only to Russia's neighbors, but to our entire vision of Europe, whole, free, and at peace. I've just returned from my 4th trip to Kiev since Ukrainians took to the streets to demonstrate for freedom and their country's independence. Their struggle for democracy, justice, and a European future is far from over, and it has come at a very heavy price. But no matter how much money and resources President Putin commits to sowing chaos in the country, he cannot change the fact that a majority of Ukrainians, not just in the West, but the South and East as well, see their future in Europe and want everything Europe has to offer. No one will ever be able to take Ukraine off the path to Europe. And while the path ahead for them may be difficult, I am confident that the people of Ukraine will continue to walk it with courage, and in doing so, inspire the world. So it is my honor to present the 2014 Freedom Award to the people of Ukraine, which is being accepted on their behalf by the very famous Ukrainian pop star, Ruslana, seen by many, by millions, as the face of the Maidan movement. Throughout the winter of 2013 and 2014, Ruslana stood with protesters, performing and motivating crowds. She's traveled to Donetsk, where she helped win the freedom of hostages on the front and visited wounded troops. She truly embodies the spirit and determination of the Ukrainian people, and I'm honored to stand next to her tonight. Please join me in welcoming Ruslana.
Thank you, Mr. McCain. I'm really, this is the very unique moment. I remember first time, your first visit, when you visited us in Maidan. You gave us power for that moment. You show us the power, and I never forget it. What is Maidan? Maidan was about independence, to be freedom, to choose your life yourself, to say truth all the time and never lies. Why Putin wants to kill us, to kill Ukrainians, to kill Ukraine? Because we choose democracy. Because we say to him, no. We are patriots. And we have power. Of course, I'm worried about Russian soldiers in my country, and I have a question. What Russian soldiers, what these guys do in my country? For what? No reason to be with Russia weapons and Russian soldiers to be in Ukraine. And I ask America, be with Ukraine and help us with the military power, because we need it. I repeat again and again, be sure we are really patriots, and we will do everything to help to save Ukraine. but we really needs things which can help us. And I believe that Ukraine is strong with America, and I believe that America is strong with Ukraine.
I've asked Senator McCain and Ruslana to both stay up there. Those were incredibly touching words, and I'm just going to repeat. I'm a journalist, so I tend to write things down in quotes. I ask America to be with Ukraine and help us. I ask America to be with Ukraine and help us. I hope our leaders are listening. So, Senator McCain, I covered your presidential campaigns, and I know you love surprises. He does not, in fact, like surprises. But we are going to surprise you nonetheless, and I would ask Senator Ayat to join us on stage to help with the surprise.
Well, I am just honored to be here tonight at the IRI Freedom Dinner, and I thank IRI, Mark Green, all of you do in this room to promote freedom around the world. But most of all, I'm very privileged to be on this stage tonight with Senator McCain and certainly Ruslana, just honored to be with you. IRI has asked me to present a surprise to John, and I had the privilege of leading IRI's delegation to observe the presidential elections in Ukraine. And one thing I heard time and time and again is how much the people of Ukraine value the United States of America and our friendship. But what I also heard time and again is how frequently and how much they admire John McCain for his unwavering support for Ukrainians, for their freedom. They admire his willingness to stand with them against Vladimir Putin's aggression. They admire his understanding that America is the leader of the free world, and it's not a country that can stay neutral when free people, like the people of Ukraine and their democratically elected government, are confronted by unprovoked aggression and an invasion of their sovereign territory. They admire Senator McCain's insistence that the United States support for Ukraine must go beyond sympathetic speeches and statements. In fact, you've heard already that Senator McCain has visited Ukraine 4 times. You have heard most poignantly the power that his speech gave in Maidan and how passionately he believes in the sovereignty and freedom of the people of Ukraine. Not only has he traveled to Ukraine 4 times, he has delivered more than 26 speeches on the Senate floor and made statements in support of Ukraine. He has introduced multiple pieces of legislation to support Ukraine. And in both open and closed-door meetings, some of which I've had the privilege of being part of, he has forcefully and consistently pushed the administration to do more for the people of Ukraine. But I would say that probably the strongest evidence of how much Senator McCain has done for Ukraine is in fact that on March 20th, Vladimir Putin sanctioned Senator McCain. I would also like to share with you the response from Senator McCain to being sanctioned by Vladimir Putin. He responded with the following statement: "I guess this means my spring break in Siberia is off, my Gazprom stock is lost, and my secret bank account in Moscow is frozen. Nonetheless, I will never cease my efforts on behalf of the freedom, independence, and territorial integrity of Ukraine, including Crimea." As John recently said, freedom is indivisible everywhere, or it becomes negotiable everywhere. And on a personal note, I so value Senator McCain's leadership, not only in the United States Senate, but also his leadership for standing up for freedom around the world. And I can't help but think that Vladimir Putin's calculations would have been quite different had we had President John McCain. Finally, it is my honor to briefly read from a letter tonight from Vitaly Yarema, the General Prosecutor of Ukraine. This letter says, "Please allow me to express my deep respect and gratitude to you, Senator McCain, for your support of democracy and independence in Ukraine. I remember your visit to Kiev on December 14th last year. Your speech in front of the participants of the peaceful protest offered us even more hope, while your active support internationally was an invaluable contribution to the defeat of the corrupt Yanukovych regime. You have been and remain a true friend of the Ukrainian people. So for your support and contribution to the people of Ukraine during the fight for democracy, freedom, and human rights, I am honored to present you with the Order of the Defense of the Maidan on behalf of Vitaly Yarema, the General Prosecutor of Ukraine." And with that, I would ask Ruslana.
Thank you, Senator Ayotte. Congratulations, Senator McCain. And to Ruslana, I'm deeply indebted to have been a part of a ceremony where we honored somebody with one name. Always wanted to just be known as Steve. I don't think that's coming. Senator McCain, congratulations. There's been no stronger advocate for Ukraine in this town, and this honor is deeply deserved. Senator McCain. We will end this evening by honoring President George H.W. Bush, our 41st president. President Bush was formally presented his Freedom Award by members of IRI's Board of Directors and Ambassador Green on May 19th at a ceremony at his home in Kennebunkport, Maine. So this evening, we honor President Bush with a special tribute. President Bush's career in public service began when he joined the Navy at 18 serving as a naval aviator in World War II. And he continues to answer the call to service today. His time of office, as we all remember, his time in office was one of tremendous change and tremendous excitement. The Cold War ended, the threat of nuclear war was drastically reduced. The Soviet Union ceased to exist, replaced by free and independent countries. The Berlin Wall fell and Germany was reunified. And he put together an international coalition of 32 nations to liberate Kuwait after it was invaded by Iraq. Not bad. And yet he remains to this day ever humble about his role in these momentous events. His service is recalled in this wonderful montage of his life and his career. Joining us this evening are Brent Scowcroft, who serves on IRI's Board of Directors, and served, of course, as National Security Advisor to President Bush, and Sam LeBlanc, President Bush's grandson, each of whom will offer some reflections on President Bush. Gentlemen.
Thank you very much. I'm not sure what I'm doing here in between this wonderful montage and the President's grandson, but let me say just a few things. First of all, the President was deeply touched by the action of the award to him, and asked me to talk about his gratitude. I'm not an unprejudiced analysis of George H.W. Bush. Let me just say, though, that I think one can argue that no president has been better prepared for the office than was George Bush. After a career defending his country in war, he first went into the Congress. After a term in the House, he became the Secretary General, I guess that's what you call him, of the Republican Party, thus getting familiar with politics at its most, I was going to say grubby, but I see John McCain looking at its most fundamental. After that, he went to the United Nations as our ambassador to the UN. And there he made it a duty to go around to all of his fellow ambassadors from around the world. And he would sit down with them and say, how are things in your country? How do you think the UN is working? And what are your views about the United States? And a unique opportunity to find out how the United States is perceived in the world. After his tour at the UN, he was sent as our second emissary to China. And China was the end of the world for us at that time. We had had no relationship at all for 20 years, and before that our relationship was combat in Korea. It was like learning a new world. How do people who have had no contact with the United States, how do they think? How do they act? How do you deal with them? A unique opportunity. He came back from that to be Director of National Intelligence, thus having access to the full panoply of our relations around the world. And after that, he was Vice President for 8 years. A daunting set of experiences. And I can tell you personally, he used every bit of all of it. But he didn't use it to aggrandize himself. As a matter of fact, he humbled himself whenever it was appropriate to do so. You all remember his famous quotation, "Read my lips, no new taxes." That was a great political statement. It turned out in his negotiations later, It was not the right statement to make in his judgment for his country. So he supported a tax increase, which allowed us to have, in a few years subsequent, a balanced budget for the first time in God only knows how long. But it cost him dearly politically. It was the right thing to do. And I want to tell you one slight expense. He liked to make his decisions following a debate among his political advisors. And I can tell you personally, some of those debates got sort of, shall we say, animated. And when the tension grew, his practice was to tell a joke. Everybody would laugh, and you could feel the tension drain out of the room. It was an honor, a privilege, and a delight to serve him. And I want to tell you, he is grateful. I am deeply grateful for you all for the award you've given him tonight. Thank you.
A professional and not a professional. I go right to the script here. First, I'd like to read a letter my grandfather sent me for all of you. I'm delighted to send my warm greetings to the organizers and assembled guests at the presentation of this year's Freedom Award by the IRI. Earlier this summer, Mark Green, Jim Colby, Connie Newman, and Brent Scowcroft came to see me here in Maine, where they filled me in on all of IRI's wonderful ongoing work. Barbara and I loved their visit and the briefing, but in return, I fear that distinguished delegation all that distinguished delegation got was some lobster salad. As you can see tonight, I have dispatched an able emissary to address this august crowd. There are two reasons for this. First, Sam has proven himself to possess a very fine command of the English language. I feel like I wrote this. While yours truly was often accused of being something other than a native speaker. Second, when you reach age 90, kind words mean a lot. A recognition like the Freedom Award, coming from an organization like the IRI, whose mission and people I respect, make it all the more meaningful. I can only hope it was not a difficult, close vote for the board. That said, I would encourage you to be kind and gentle with Sam, but as you can see, he is a strapping young lad, man, who can handle himself and who makes his old grandfather very proud. So thank you again, and Sam, keep it short, which I will. It's really an honor for me to represent my grandfather here tonight. I would like to thank General Scowcroft for his kind words. I mean, he is a dear friend of my grandfather's, and I look forward to reporting back to him with all the wonderful things he and everyone else I got to meet with tonight has said. It's true that my grandfather has reached the highest pinnacle in the land, the presidency of the United States, and he accomplished many amazing things. The unprecedented coalition during the Gulf War, the Americans with Disabilities Act, the Clean Air Act, the end of the Cold War without a shot being, fired. I mean, it goes on and on. But that's not how I know him. That's not what I most admire about him. It's the little things he does that make an enormous impact. The small kindnesses. I'm not sure if anyone here got a chance to see the 41 on 41 that recently was on a network, not to be named. Mary Kay Carey and Rick Kaplan created a fantastic and unique, emotional window into my grandfather's life, and one story in particular stuck out to me. When my grandfather was in high school at Phillips Academy, there were some senior boys ordering the new boys around, kind of like a hazing ritual. They started really picking on a small guy named Bruce Gelb, ordering him to carry a heavy chair they knew he couldn't manage up the stairs to one of the seniors' rooms. He struggled while the seniors kind of sat over there and laughed at him. My grandfather saw this, walked over and said, "I'll take this side. You get that side." My grandfather helped him carry the chair all the way up, and Bruce Gelb never forgot it. Years later, after Mr. Gelb had become the president of Clairol Incorporated, head of the USIA, ambassador to Belgium, he told a reporter this: "They say there are no heroes for young teenagers in our society. But I can tell you at age 14 and a half, I had my own personal hero, a guy that hated bullies, and it was George Bush." My grandfather is truly the master of the small gesture. A phone call to lift someone up when they're down, a handwritten note of encouragement, or even a helping hand. These are things that matter, and these are things that I'm most proud of. In closing, shortly in closing, I would like to thank the IRI Board of Directors and officers and senior staff for putting together such an incredible night. I can assure you there is no one more honored and grateful than my grandfather today. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. That was terrific. Thank you, General Scowcroft. And now, ladies and gentlemen, our evening comes to a close, and I would like to ask Mark Green to join me on stage for some final words. Ambassador Green.
30-plus years ago, when President Reagan gave that timeless speech to the British Parliament, the clarion call that essentially launched the NED and IRI and other organizations, he warned us that our work would be challenging and it would be difficult. He said, "We have not inherited an easy world." As we look around at backsliding democracies, at authoritarian challenges to human dignity, at efforts to redefine liberty and to shut down opposing voices, we understand what he meant. But that speech in London was also profoundly optimistic, because he knew that the voices and forces of freedom must one day prevail. Tonight we honor the courage of activists like the men and the women of the Maidan. We honor the leadership of an American president who has dedicated his life to advancing the cause of freedom. We pay tribute to one of our own, Rich Williamson, who dearly loved the cause that brings us here tonight. And we are inspired and we are energized. No, we have not inherited an easy world. But of course, that's why we're here. My personal thanks to Senator McCain, our chairman, the board members who have done so much to make tonight a success, the dedicated staff who fight for democracy every day and in every way, to Ruslana, who traveled a long way to give voice to the aspirations and hopes of the Ukrainian people, to Steve Hayes, fellow believer, fellow cheesehead, for guiding us through tonight. But finally, and most importantly, to all of you, thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for your support of IRI. Thank you for your support of this cause. It means so much to so many. So thank you, Godspeed. I hope you will join us down the hall in the Chinese room for dessert and coffee. But thanks so much for being here tonight. Thanks and Godspeed.